Have you ever wondered where your household really stands in the wealth ladder? You might think you're solidly middle class, but the numbers often tell a completely different story. In this video, we're breaking down exactly what net worth looks like across the United States, from households struggling at the bottom to those sitting in the top 10%. By the end, you'll see where your household really fits, and some of the numbers might surprise you. First, a quick note. These numbers refer to household net worth, not income and not individual wealth. Net worth is calculated by taking everything you own, your home, retirement accounts, investments, savings, vehicles, and other assets, and subtracting everything you owe, like mortgages, credit cards, student loans, and other debt. What's left is your net worth. The data comes from the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, adjusted to 2026 values. As Luke 14:28 teaches, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? Let's start at the bottom and work our way up. Lower class, bottom 25%. Households in the lower 25% have a net worth of less than about $23,000. At this level, assets are very limited. Some may have a small savings account or an older vehicle, but debts often offset much of what they own. In many cases, net worth is close to zero or even negative. This group is typically living paycheck to paycheck. Unexpected expenses can be financially disruptive, and long-term investment accounts are often minimal or non-existent. This doesn't necessarily mean low income, though income and wealth often correlate. Sometimes people in this group are early in their careers, paying down student loans or recovering from setbacks. Lower middle class, 25th to 50th percentile. If your household is in the lower middle class, your net worth is probably somewhere between $23,000 and $179,000. At this stage, many people have started building real assets, but most of that wealth is tied up in their home. It's not usually the result of aggressive saving or investing. Rather, it comes from simply owning a house. A modest amount may also be in a 401k, retirement account, or savings, but it's often just a fraction. The key thing to understand is that while this group has made progress, the financial cushion is still very limited. Much of their wealth isn't easily accessible. If a surprise expense pops up, like a car repair or temporary job loss, they might have to dip into small liquid savings, take on new debt, or adjust their budget. In other words, being in the lower middle class means you're building towards stability, but there's still a level of financial fragility. You have some assets, but not enough flexibility to absorb big shocks without careful planning. Proverbs 21:20 says, "The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down." From here, households usually head in one of two directions. Many will stay in the lower middle class, making slow progress over time. But a fraction of this group who begins saving, investing, or increasing their income strategically can accelerate upward and eventually reach higher wealth brackets. The key is that where you start isn't permanent. Intentional steps can shift your trajectory over the years. Median, 50th percentile. We now reach the median, the 50th percentile. This is the point where half of American households have more wealth and half have less. According to the data, the median net worth sits at about $179,000. That number often surprises people. When we see headlines about rising home values or booming stock markets, we assume the average American must be doing great. What does a median net worth of $179,000 actually look like in real life? For most at this level, much of that $179,000 isn't sitting in a checking account. A large share is tied up in home equity, with some money in retirement accounts. A typical median household might have home ownership with some equity, often the majority of net worth, retirement savings growing but not rapidly, modest liquid savings, and some manageable consumer debt. The middle is doing all right, but they're not really thriving. They have steady income and access to credit, but they're mostly just treading water. However, households that prioritize investing, reducing debt, or increasing income can completely change their trajectory over time. Small but consistent actions here can compound into substantial wealth growth. Upper middle class, 50 to 75th percentile. This bracket has net worth roughly $179,000 to $610,000. Most households own homes with significant equity, but retirement accounts are often well established. Probably at least half is tied up in home equity, but compared with lower brackets, this is starting to balance out. If a household has a net worth of around $500,000, it's likely split about half in home equity and half in savings, investments, and other assets. Things begin gradually shifting toward assets that can grow and be more flexible, rather than just relying on a home as their largest source of wealth. Debt is still present, mortgages, car loans, but it's manageable relative to income and often more intentional. This is a major transition phase, and households that build steady, diversified growth here often move into the top 25%, demonstrating how intentional choices can accelerate upward trajectory over time. Upper class, 75th to 90th percentile. Households between the 75th and 90th percentile have a net worth between roughly $610,000 and $1.72 million, placing them in the upper class. At this level, the financial picture really begins to change. People in this group typically have multiple asset types: home equity, retirement accounts, taxable investments, and sometimes business ownership or extra real estate. The biggest difference, investments now make up the majority of net worth, probably around 75%, with home equity accounting for the rest. This indicates a shift from wealth built primarily through property to wealth built through diversified assets. Because they've established smart financial habits and prioritized growth, moving up to the next wealth tier becomes much easier. Assets compound, investments grow, and the momentum starts to carry itself. Top 10%. To reach the top 10%, a household needs a net worth of roughly $1.72 million or more. This is the point where people start moving into what we'd call the wealthy class. Wealth at this level works differently. Investments make up the bulk of net worth, with just a fraction in home equity. Stock portfolios, real estate holdings, and other assets can generate dividends, interest, rental income, and business profits. This means the money is actively working for the household rather than just sitting around. Some households here have reached full financial independence, where their investments alone can support their lifestyle. Others are still working, but their substantial financial base gives them freedom and flexibility that most people can only dream of. The ability to take risks, invest opportunistically, or plan for multiple generations. Even within the top 10%, there's a pretty big range. Households near the lower threshold might still be focused on growth, while those closer to the top 1%, with net worths of tens of millions, see wealth compound in ways that are almost unstoppable. But keep in mind, all of these numbers don't account for age. Younger households may appear in the lower brackets simply because they're early in their careers or still paying off student loans. The important part is trajectory. Proverbs 22:7 is blunt. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. People who are intentional tend to move up the ladder over time, often faster than it seems. 1 Timothy 6:6 reminds us, but godliness with contentment is great gain. Where you are today is just your current location. Paying down debt, building equity, and investing consistently can move you up over time. Understanding the numbers gives you perspective, and that's the first step toward climbing the ladder with wisdom and faithfulness. Philippians 4:11-13 teaches us to learn contentment in any situation, knowing we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. Your financial journey is not just about numbers. It's about faithful stewardship of what God has entrusted to you. Final encouragement. Live below your means. Build margin. Eliminate foolish debt. Invest consistently. Pray for wisdom in every decision. Small, consistent, faithful steps compound over time, both financially and spiritually. If this video gave you a clearer picture of where you stand and where you're headed, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Drop a comment. What's one intentional step you're going to take this month to improve your trajectory? May the Lord give you wisdom, discipline, contentment, and provision as you faithfully steward what He's given you. Shalom.